Clara, sweetheart, drink this. It'll help with the pain. My sister, Emma's voice was honey-sweet as she pressed the warm mug into my trembling hands. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and lilies, the flowers Jack had brought me before everything went dark the first time. But this time, I knew better. Thank you, I whispered, my voice barely audible as machines beeped around my hospital bed. The mug felt heavy in my bandaged hands that had been crushed in what everyone believed was an accident. What I now knew was attempted murder. Emma smiled that perfect, caring smile. The same smile she'd worn when she pushed me down those stairs 3 days ago. The same smile she'd worn at my funeral in my previous life. Drink up, Clara. Mum and Dad are so worried about you. We all just want you to get better. I lifted the mug to my lips, inhaling the familiar scent. Hot chocolate, my favourite. But underneath the sweetness there was something else, something bitter and medicinal that made my stomach clench with recognition. Digitalis, just like before. The heart medication that had stopped my heart permanently at age 22. The medication Emma had stolen from our grandmother's medicine cabinet and dissolved into my drinks for weeks, slowly poisoning me while playing the devoted sister. I can't, I said suddenly, my voice cracking with emotion. I'm not thirsty. Emma's perfect mask slipped for just a moment. A flash of irritation crossed her delicate features before the concerned expression returned. Clara, you haven't had anything to drink in hours. The doctor said you need to stay hydrated. The doctor said that... I met her eyes directly, watching for any tell. When did you speak to him? She blinked rapidly, the same nervous tic she'd had since childhood when caught in a lie. When I came to visit earlier, while you were sleeping. Liar. Just like before, Emma was making up medical advice to justify her poisoning attempts. But this time, I wasn't the trusting, naive girl who believed her sister's every word. This time, I remembered everything. I remembered Emma switching our college applications, stealing my acceptance letters and submitting hers under my name to get into the prestigious art program I'd worked for years to qualify for. I remembered her seducing Jack, my Jack, with lies about my supposed betrayal, turning him against me with fabricated evidence of my cheating. Most painfully, I remembered my parents' faces at my funeral, their devastation as they mourned the daughter they'd lost, never knowing they'd protected the wrong one their entire lives. Emma, I said slowly, setting the mug carefully on the bedside table. Do you remember when we were kids? That time you broke Mum's favourite vase? Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows drew together. What does that have to do with... You let me take the blame. I was grounded for 2 weeks. I studied her face, watching the confusion bloom into something sharper. But you cried so hard when Mum yelled at me. I thought it was because you felt guilty. I did feel guilty, Emma said quickly. Too quickly. No. My voice was gaining strength, conviction flowing through me like fire. You cried because you were afraid I'd tell the truth, just like you're afraid now. The machines around my bed seemed to beep louder in the sudden silence. Emma's hand tightened around her designer purse, the purse she'd bought with money meant for my medical expenses in my previous life. Clara, you're not making sense. The accident, the head injury... What accident? I interrupted, my voice rising despite my injured state. Tell me exactly what happened, Emma. Walk me through how I ended up falling down our stairs. She took a step back, her face paling. You were carrying laundry. You missed a step. I was carrying laundry up the stairs toward the 2nd floor, I said, each word deliberate and sharp. So, how did I end up at the bottom of the basement stairs, Emma? How did I fall up a flight of stairs and then somehow tumble down into the basement? The colour drained from her face completely. In my previous life, I'd been too injured, too trusting, too drugged to notice the inconsistencies in her story. I'd accepted that My memory was fuzzy from the head trauma, but I remembered now. I remembered Emma calling me to the top of the basement stairs, claiming she'd found something of mine down there. I remembered the hard shove against my back, the sensation of flying, the crack of my bones against concrete steps. "You're confused," Emma whispered, but her voice shook. "The doctors said head injuries can cause false memories." "Drink it!" She blinked. "What?" I nodded toward the mug on my bedside table. "The hot chocolate. You made it specially for me, didn't you? To help with my pain." My voice grew stronger, more certain. "So, drink it, Emma. Show me how safe it is." The silence stretched between us like a wire about to snap. Emma's perfectly manicured fingers twisted around her purse strap, her breathing becoming rapid and shallow. "That's ridiculous, Clara. It's for you. I made it with your favourite recipe. Our grandmother's digitalis prescription, the one that went missing from her pillbox last week." I pushed myself up in the hospital bed, ignoring the shooting pain through my ribs. The same medication that showed up in my blood work after I died the first time. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Emma's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, fear, calculation, and finally something cold and hard that I'd never seen before. Or rather, something I'd never allowed myself to see. "You died the first time?" Her voice was different now, colder. "Clara, you're having some kind of breakdown. I should call the nurse." "You pushed me down those stairs because I found out about the college applications," I continued, my voice gaining power with each word. "You've been sabotaging me for years, stealing my opportunities, my relationships, my life, but you made one mistake, Emma." She stood frozen, her hand halfway to the call button. "You assumed I'd die quietly, like the good little sister who always cleaned up your messes." I smiled, and I could feel that it wasn't a nice smile. But somehow I got a second chance, and this time I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you really are. Emma's mask finally shattered completely. The sweet, caring expression vanished, replaced by something vicious and desperate. "You can't prove anything," she hissed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Everyone loves me. Everyone trusts me. You're just the unstable sister who's clearly having some kind of psychotic episode after your accident." "We'll see about that." I reached for my phone on the bedside table, my movements deliberate despite my injuries. "I think Mum and Dad should know about this conversation, and maybe the police should test that hot chocolate for digitalis." Emma lunged forward, her hand slamming down on my wrist. "Don't!" The word came out like a snake's hiss, and for a moment I saw the real Emma, the one who'd been hiding behind the perfect daughter facade our entire lives, the one who'd killed me out of pure, jealous rage. But I wasn't the same Clara who died trusting her sister until the very end. "Get your hands off me," I said quietly, "or I start screaming for security." She released me immediately, stumbling backward. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, and I could see the wheels turning in her head as she tried to figure out her next move. "This isn't over," she whispered. "No," I agreed, settling back against my pillows with grim satisfaction. "It's just beginning." Emma fled the room, her heels clicking frantically against the linoleum floor. As soon as she was gone, I carefully lifted the mug of poisoned hot chocolate and set it aside for the police to test. Then I dialed Jack's number. This time I would save us both. Jack arrived 20 minutes later, his dark hair dishevelled and concern etched deep into his features. The sight of him made my heart clench, not with the desperate love I'd felt in my previous life, but with a bittersweet ache for what we'd lost. "Clara, thank God." He rushed to my bedside, his hands hovering uncertainly over my bandaged form. "When Emma called and said you'd had some kind of episode." "She called you?" I kept my voice carefully neutral, though inside fury blazed. Of course, Emma had gotten to him first, just like before. She's worried about you, said you were acting paranoid, accusing her of... He trailed off, his blue eyes searching my face. Clara, what's going on? The doctor said your injuries were severe, but Emma mentioned you were saying some pretty disturbing things. I studied Jack's face, the face I'd loved so desperately, the face that had looked at me with such disgust and betrayal when Emma had shown him those fabricated photos of me supposedly cheating. In my previous life, I'd died believing he hated me. But now I could see what I'd missed before. The way his jaw tightened when he mentioned Emma's name. The slight reluctance in his voice. The fact that he'd come running the moment he thought I was in trouble, despite everything Emma had undoubtedly told him. Jack, I said softly, do you remember the night of your birthday party last year? The one where you said I stood you up? He stiffened. Clara, I don't think this is the time. I never stood you up. I reached for his hand with my uninjured one. I was there. I was waiting for you by the fountain in Riverside Park, just like we planned. I waited for 3 hours. Confusion flickered across his features. That's impossible. Emma showed me the text you sent, saying you were with someone else. She had photos. Photos of me with David Chen from my study group, taken 2 weeks earlier when we were working on our history project. I watched his face carefully. Emma screenshotted those from my social media and changed the timestamps, just like she faked those text messages using her computer. Jack's hand trembled slightly under mine. Why would she do that? Because she wanted you for herself. The words came out steady despite the pain they carried, and she knew the only way to get you was to destroy what we had first. I could see the moment doubt crept in. His eyes widened slightly, and he pulled his hand back to run it through his hair. Clara, that's crazy. Emma has always been nothing but supportive of our relationship. Here's she... I pushed myself up straighter despite the pain. Really think about it, Jack. Every fight we had, every misunderstanding, wasn't Emma always there afterward offering comfort and advice? Wasn't she always the one telling you I was acting strange or that she'd heard rumours about me? His silence was telling. The job interview at Morrison and Associates, I continued relentlessly. The one I mysteriously never got called for, despite having the perfect qualifications. Emma works there now, doesn't she? Jack's face went pale. She said you withdrew your application. I never withdrew anything. Just like I never cheated on you, never stood you up, and never sent those cruel messages Emma showed you after I supposedly died. I leaned forward, forcing him to meet my eyes. Jack, in all the time you've known me, have I ever been cruel? Have I ever been manipulative or dishonest? He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see years of careful manipulation crumbling in his mind. No, he whispered. You were the kindest person I knew. Then, why did you believe I would suddenly become someone else? Before he could answer, my parents burst through the door. Mum's face was streaked with tears, Dad's jaw set with barely controlled anger. Clara Elizabeth Morrison, Dad's voice boomed through the small room. What is this nonsense Emma is telling us about you accusing her of trying to hurt you? Mum rushed to my other side, her hands fluttering over my injuries. Sweetheart, the doctor said you might have some confusion from the head trauma, but Emma is beside herself. How could you say such horrible things to your sister? I looked between my parents, the people who had raised Emma and me equally, but who had always somehow favoured her without realising it. Even now, their first instinct was to protect Emma, to assume I was the problem. Mum, Dad, I said carefully, I need you both to sit down. Clara, Dad started, please. My voice carried authority I'd never possessed in my previous life. Sit down and listen to me. Really, listen. Something in my tone made them comply. They settled into the uncomfortable hospital chairs, though Dad's posture remained rigid with defensive anger. "Do you remember when I was 12 and Emma was 14? I began. "I won the state science fair with my project on water filtration systems." Mum smiled slightly. "Of course, sweetheart. You were so proud." The next day, my project mysteriously disappeared from the school display case. The trophy vanished from my rooms. I watched their faces. Emma found it a week later in the school dumpster, remember? She was the hero who rescued it for me. "What are you implying?" Dad's voice was dangerously quiet. "I'm not implying anything. I'm telling you that Emma stole my project and threw it away because she couldn't stand that I'd won something she hadn't." I turned to Jack. "Just like she stole the acceptance letter to the Eastwood Art Academy, the one that was supposed to be mine." Mum gasped. "Clara, that's impossible. Emma earned that scholarship with my portfolio." I met her eyes steadily. "The portfolio I spent 2 years creating, that mysteriously got lost right before applications were due. Emma found it and submitted it as her own work." The room fell silent except for the steady beep of my heart monitor. "These are very serious accusations," Dad said slowly. "Yes, they are." I reached for my phone again. "Which is why I've documented everything. Every scholarship Emma stole, every opportunity she sabotaged, every lie she told to turn people against me." I pulled up a folder I'd created in my previous life, but never had the courage to use, including the emails between Emma and the admissions officer at Morrison and Associates, where she explicitly told them to disregard my application because I was unstable. Jack made a strangled sound. "You have emails?" "I forwarded everything to myself before I died. Before the accident," I corrected quickly. "Some part of me knew something was wrong, even if I couldn't face it then." Mum's face was crumbling. "Clara, sweetheart, why didn't you tell us any of this before?" "Because Emma is very good at making me look like the problem." I scrolled through my phone, finding the screenshots I needed. Every time I tried to confront her, she'd cry and play the victim. She'd convince everyone that I was jealous, paranoid, attention-seeking. I held up my phone, showing them a text thread between Emma and her friend Rachel from 6 months ago. "Read it out loud, Mum." With shaking hands, Mum took the phone. Her voice was barely a whisper as she read, "Finally convinced Jack that Clara's cheating on him. The idiot actually believed those fake photos I made. Soon, he'll be mine, and she'll have nothing left. She doesn't deserve him anyway." The silence that followed was deafening. Dad's face had gone ashen. This can't be real." "Keep reading," I said quietly. Mum's voice broke as she continued. "Clara's getting too close to the truth about the college applications. Might have to accelerate my timeline. She always was too trusting. Probably wouldn't even fight back if I..." "Oh my God." The phone slipped from her fingers. Jack was staring at the screen in horror. What? Clara, what was she planning?" I met his eyes, then my parents'. "To kill me. And she almost succeeded." The mug of poisoned hot chocolate still sat on my bedside table, a silent testament to how close I'd come to dying twice. "We need to call the police," Dad said, his voice hollow. "We need to..." "Yes," I agreed, "we do. But first, there's something else you need to know." I pulled up one more file, the one that would shatter everything they thought they knew about their perfect daughter. "Emma has been systematically poisoning me with digitalis for 3 months. The same drug that's now in that hot chocolate she brought me today." The heart monitor's beeping seemed to grow louder as my family stared at the evidence of their beloved daughter's true nature. This time, the right child would be protected. This time, justice would finally be served. Detective Rivera arrived with 2 uniformed officers 40 minutes later. By then, the hospital lab had already confirmed the presence of digitalis in the hot chocolate, enough to stop a heart within hours. "Miss Morrison," Detective Rivera said, settling into the chair beside my bed with a notepad. "Your parents have provided us with some very disturbing evidence. I need to ask you some questions about your sister's behaviour." "Before you do," I interrupted, "there's someone else you need to speak with. Dr. Helena Martinez at Riverside General Hospital." The detective's pen paused over his notepad. "Who is Dr. Martinez?" "The doctor who treated me when I died 3 months ago." I watched his eyebrows rise. "I was clinically dead for 4 minutes before they revived me. Cause of death was digitalis poisoning, but it was ruled accidental because I supposedly had access to my grandmother's medication." Jack moved closer to my bed, his face pale. "Clara, you never told me you died." "Because I didn't remember until now. But Dr. Martinez will have records of my blood work, the toxicology reports, everything." I turned back to Detective Rivera. "She'll also tell you about the visitor I had right before I went into cardiac arrest. A young woman who brought me a milkshake and stayed with me for over an hour." "Emma," Mum whispered, her voice breaking. Detective Rivera made notes rapidly. "We'll contact Dr. Martinez immediately. In the meantime, I need you to walk me through everything that happened today." As I recounted Emma's visit and the poisoned drink, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Through the partially open door, I caught sight of Emma approaching with 2 security guards. "She's in there," Emma was saying, her voice carrying that perfect note of concerned distress. "My poor sister has been having delusions since her accident. She's been saying terrible things, making wild accusations. I'm worried she might hurt herself." I met Detective Rivera's eyes. "She's here." Emma entered the room with practiced grace, her face a mask of worried innocence, until she saw the police officers and the evidence bags containing the hot chocolate mug. "What's going on?" she asked, but I caught the slight tremor in her voice. "Emma Morrison?" Detective Rivera stood. "I'm Detective Rivera. I need to ask you some questions about your sister's medical condition." "Of course." Emma moved closer, but I noticed she kept herself near the door. "Poor Clara has been so confused since her fall. The doctors said head trauma can cause paranoia and false memories." "Interesting," Detective Rivera said, consulting his notepad. "Because the doctors we spoke with said your sister's mental faculties are completely intact. They also confirmed that digitalis was found in the drink you brought her today." Emma's face went white. That's impossible. I made that hot chocolate myself at home." "From a mix that contained crushed digitalis tablets," Detective Rivera continued. "The same medication that killed your sister 3 months ago." "Killed her?" Emma's voice rose to a perfect pitch of confusion. "What are you talking about? Clara is right here." Dad stepped forward, his face a mask of cold fury I'd never seen before. "Emma, stop lying. We've seen the text messages. We know what you did." Emma's gaze darted between our parents, Jack, and the police officers. I could see her calculating, trying to find the right angle of attack. "Text messages can be faked," she said finally. "Clara's always been jealous of me. She probably created those messages herself to frame me, because she couldn't stand that Jack chose me after she cheated. I never cheated." Jack's voice cut through her words like a blade. "Just like I never chose you, Emma. You manipulated me with lies and fake evidence, then preyed on my grief when I thought Clara was dead." Emma's perfect composure began to crack. "Jack, you know that's not true. We have something real." "We have nothing." Jack's voice was flat, final. "I was never interested in you, Emma. Not once. Every advance you made, I turned down. Every time you tried to get me alone, I found excuses to leave. The only reason I ever spoke to you after Clara's death was because I thought you were grieving too." "You're lying!" Emma's mask slipped completely, revealing the desperate fury underneath. "You came to me. You needed comfort, and I gave it to you. We made love." "We never touched." Jack's face was stone. "Not once. You're delusional, Emma." Detective Rivera watched this exchange with growing interest. "Miss Morrison, I think we need to continue this conversation at the station." Emma backed toward the door, but the uniformed officers moved to block her path. "This is insane," she said, her voice rising to a near shriek. "You're all believing the fantasies of someone who's clearly having a psychotic break. Clara has always been unstable, always jealous of me. She's making all of this up." "Including the digitalis in your grandmother's pillbox that went missing?" Detective Rivera asked. "The same medication that's now in your bloodstream from handling it without gloves." Emma went rigid. "What?" "We tested your hands when we arrived, Miss Morrison. Digitalis leaves traces, especially when you've been crushing tablets into powder." He nodded to the officers. "Emma Morrison, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy, and the murder of Clara Morrison on June 15th. "Murder?" Emma's voice cracked. "She's not dead. She's right there." "The Clara Morrison who died 3 months ago," Detective Rivera clarified as the officers moved forward with handcuffs. "The one whose death certificate we're now going to investigate as a homicide." As they cuffed her, Emma's facade finally shattered completely. The sweet, caring sister disappeared, replaced by someone I barely recognized. "You stupid bitch!" she screamed at me, struggling against the officers. "You were supposed to stay dead. Everything was perfect. I had Jack. I had the college acceptance. I had Mom and Dad's love. You ruined everything by coming back." "Coming back?" Detective Rivera exchanged glances with his partner. "Miss Morrison, are you confessing to killing your sister?" Emma seemed to realize what she'd said, her face going pale, but it was too late. The words hung in the air like a signed confession. "I want a lawyer," she whispered. "That's your right," Detective Rivera said as the officers prepared to escort her out. "You'll need one." As they led Emma away, she turned back one last time. The look she gave me was pure hatred, all pretense gone. "This isn't over, Clara. Even if I go to prison, everyone will know what you really are. They'll know you're the crazy sister who faked her own death for attention." "No," I said quietly. "They'll know I'm the sister who survived your murder attempt twice. They'll know I'm the one who finally told the truth." The door closed behind her, and suddenly the room felt lighter, like a crushing weight had been lifted from all of us. Mum collapsed into Dad's arms, sobbing. "How did we not see it? How did we protect the wrong child all of these years?" "Because she was very good at hiding," Jack said softly, taking my hand. "Because she made herself appear to be everything Clara actually was. Kind, caring, innocent." Detective Rivera packed up his notepad. "We'll need formal statements from all of you, but for now, try to get some rest. This is going to be a long process." After everyone left except Jack, the room fell into peaceful quiet. He sat beside my bed, holding my hand gently. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, "for believing her lies, for not seeing through her manipulation, for not protecting you." "You couldn't have known," I said, squeezing his hand. "She fooled everyone, including our parents. That's what made her so dangerous. When you died, when I thought you died, it nearly destroyed me." His voice was thick with emotion. "I blamed myself for believing her lies about you cheating. I kept thinking if I'd just trusted you more, if I'd loved you better. Jack," I turned to face him fully, "I need you to know something. When I was dying, really dying, my only regret wasn't the life I was losing. It was that I'd never told you I forgave you. Even when I thought you hated me, I still loved you." Tears ran down his cheeks. "How? How could you forgive me when I failed you so completely? Because that's what love is, I said simply. And this time, we get to do it right. He leaned down and kissed my forehead, gentle as a prayer. This time, I'll never let anyone hurt you again. Outside the window, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. For the first time in longer than I could remember, the future looked bright. Emma was finally where she belonged, and the truth was finally free. The courtroom was packed as Emma's sentencing hearing began. I sat in the front row between Jack and my parents, wearing the blue dress that Emma had always claimed looked better on her. Today, it felt like armour. Emma looked different in her orange jumpsuit, smaller somehow, diminished. The perfect hair was lank, the flawless makeup gone. But her eyes still burned with the same malevolent hatred they'd held the day she was arrested. Your Honour, the prosecutor stood, addressing Judge Williams. The defendant has been found guilty of first-degree murder, attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. The evidence shows a pattern of systematic abuse spanning over a decade. I glanced at the evidence table, where dozens of items told the story of Emma's crimes. The fake college applications, the forged medical records, the digitally-laced drinks, and most damning of all, the journal. Emma's journal, found hidden in her bedroom wall, contained detailed plans for my murder going back 2 years. Page after page of calculations about dosages, timing, and how to make it look accidental. She'd even practiced her grief performance, writing out the exact words she'd use at my funeral. The defendant's own writings reveal a calculated plan to systematically destroy her sister's life before ultimately ending it. The prosecutor continued. She stole educational opportunities, sabotaged relationships, and when those methods weren't sufficient, she turned to poison. Judge Williams studied Emma with cold disgust. Miss Morrison, you've been found guilty of murdering your sister, and then attempting to murder her again when she survived. Do you have anything to say before sentencing? Emma rose slowly, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of remorse cross her face. But when she spoke, her voice was steady and utterly devoid of shame. I regret that Clara survived the first time. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Mum stifled a sob beside me. I should have used more digitalis initially, Emma continued, her voice growing stronger. I should have made sure she was really dead. Everything that's happened since then is her fault for being too stubborn to stay buried. Judge Williams' gavel slammed down. That's enough! No. Emma's composure finally shattered completely. You don't understand. Clara was always the favourite. She was always the golden child, the smart one, the talented one. Even when I worked twice as hard, even when I sacrificed everything, it was always Clara this, Clara that. She turned to stare directly at me, her face twisted with pure hatred. I earned those college acceptances. I deserved Jack's love. I was the one who comforted everyone when you died, who held our family together. I should have been the survivor. You were never the survivor, Emma, I said quietly, standing up despite Jack's attempt to hold me back. You were always the parasite. The courtroom fell silent. Everything you achieved, you stole from me. Every relationship you formed was built on lies about me. Even our parents' love, you only had it because you convinced them I was the problem. My voice grew stronger. You were never anything on your own. You were just a hollow copy of everything I was. Emma's face contorted with rage. I was better than you. I was prettier, smarter, more deserving. Everyone loved me more. No. Dad's voice cut through her tirade. He stood slowly, his face etched with grief and disgust. Everyone loved the person you pretended to be, the person who was actually Clara all along. Mum rose beside him. We loved kindness, Emma. We loved generosity and talent and compassion. We never loved you, because the real you is standing there right now, and she's monstrous. Emma's scream of fury echoed off the courtroom walls. You all made me this way. You forced me to be perfect, while Clara got to be loved just for existing. I had to fight for every scrap of attention, every moment of approval. You had our love too, Mum whispered, tears streaming down her face. We loved you equally. But that was never enough, was it? You didn't want to be loved equally. You wanted Clara to be destroyed. Judge Williams had heard enough. Emma Morrison, you are sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of Clara Morrison. You will serve an additional 25 years for attempted murder. These sentences will run consecutively. No! Emma lunged toward me, but the bailiffs were ready. This isn't over, Clara. Even in prison, I'll find a way to destroy you. I'll make sure everyone knows. Her words were cut off as the bailiffs dragged her from the courtroom, but her eyes remained locked on mine until the doors closed behind her. The silence that followed felt sacred somehow, like the end of a long nightmare. 2 years later, I stood at the easel in my art studio, the one I'd always dreamed of having, putting the finishing touches on my latest painting. It was a landscape of a sunrise breaking through storm clouds, vibrant and alive with possibility. It's beautiful, Jack said from behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. Like everything else you create. I leaned back against him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. It's called second chances. Appropriate. He kissed the top of my head. Especially today. Today marked the second anniversary of Emma's sentencing. It also marks something else, my graduation from the Eastwood Art Academy, using the portfolio I'd recreated from memory. The same portfolio Emma had stolen and destroyed, thinking she'd erased my dreams forever. The gallery opening is in 3 hours, I said, turning in his arms. Are you nervous? Me? You're the one with 20 paintings about to be judged by art critics. Jack smiled, but I could see the pride in his eyes. Though, I suppose I am a little nervous about the other thing. The other thing. My stomach fluttered with anticipation. At exactly 7 o'clock, the Riverside Gallery filled with people eager to see Reborn, a collection by Clara Morrison. My parents stood near the entrance, beaming as they watched visitors examine each piece. Dr. Martinez was there, along with Detective Rivera and even Judge Williams, who'd become something of a mentor to me during Emma's trial. Ladies and gentlemen, the gallery owner called for attention. I'd like to invite the artist to say a few words about her collection. I took the microphone with steady hands, looking out at the faces of everyone who'd supported me through the darkest period of my life. 2 years ago, I died, I began simply, not metaphorically, literally. My heart stopped, and for 4 minutes, I was gone. When I came back, I remembered things I'd forgotten, saw truths I'd been blind to, and found strength I never knew I had. The room was completely silent. This collection is about rebirth, not just surviving trauma, but transforming it into something beautiful. Each painting represents a moment when I chose to live fully, instead of just surviving. I gestured to the centerpiece painting, a self-portrait showing 2 versions of myself. One was pale and broken, surrounded by shadows. The other was vibrant and strong, reaching toward light. I learned that sometimes the people who claim to love us are the ones who hurt us most. But I also learned that surviving that betrayal doesn't make us victims. It makes us warriors. Applause filled the gallery, but I wasn't finished. There's someone here tonight who gave me a reason to fight for that second chance at life. I turned to find Jack in the crowd. Jack, could you come here, please? He looked confused, but made his way through the crowd. When he reached me, I took his hand and smiled. You taught me what real love looks like, I said, my voice carrying throughout the silent gallery. Love that trusts, love that protects, love that sees through lies to find truth. Jack's eyes widened as I dropped to one knee, pulling out the ring I'd hidden in my paint box. You asked me once, and I never got to answer properly before everything went wrong. I smiled up at him through happy tears. So, I'm asking you now, Jack Morrison, will you marry me? The gallery erupted in cheers and applause. Jack pulled me to my feet, kissing me as cameras flashed around us. Yes, he whispered against my lips, in this life and every life after. As we held each other, surrounded by friends and family and art born from ashes, I thought about Emma sitting in her prison cell. She'd spent her whole life trying to steal mine, never realizing that a life built on theft and lies could never truly satisfy. But I had learned something she never would. The most beautiful life is one you build yourself from your own truth, with people who love the real you. I had died and been reborn, but this time I was finally truly alive. The newspaper headline the next day read, "Local artist's stunning recovery, from death to dreams realized." But the real story wasn't in any newspaper. The real story was in the life I'd built from the ruins of Emma's hatred, a life so bright and full of love that even murder couldn't dim it. Emma had tried to bury me twice. Instead, I had bloomed.